Hey guys, welcome to another Infinity video. It's going to be a review video. It's going to be Haqqislam, the faction, the vanilla faction. We're going to go through all the profiles. I know you guys love these videos. I know you love to see what my opinions are, even though you know the game very well. I know if you're a new player, you like getting some ideas about how an experienced player views the units, an idea about what to buy if you're just starting out. So we're going to go through it all. It's going to be a long video. Just want to say for the record, today's the 15th of December 2017, nearly at the end of the year. The reason I mention the date is that obviously Corvus-Belli, the designers of Infinity, change the game sometimes, and they release erratas and they change the profiles and they bring out new units. So obviously this video will get dated, but it'll take a long time for it to get so dated that it becomes irrelevant. So we'll go through it all. Haqqislam, the faction. Some people really love to characterize factions and treat them like they're very, very distinct and, say, oh, this is the XYZ faction. Just remember, Infinity is a game where the factions and the sectorials aren't as distinct from each other as other factions in other war games are distinct from each other. If you look at, obviously, the Games Workshop games or the Privateer Press games or War Machine or Hordes, even Guild Ball, the distinctions between the actual playable factions are quite radical. Some factions have abilities that others don't. Whereas in Infinity, you've got a pool of guns and a pool of abilities, and they're spread around the factions. There's only a few really, really unique things. Having said that, Haqqislam is a bit of a finesse faction. You see a lot more irregular troops than you do regular troops. You've got to balance that that sort of dichotomy of regular orders and irregular orders. They're also sometimes seen as a little bit of a low-tech faction compared to like Combined Army or Pan-Oceania, for example. They aren't quite as low-tech as as Ariadne, but you see a lot of rifles which are not as good as combi rifles, and they're they don't have many they don't have multi-snipers, they've got the regular snipers. Having said that, you've got the viral weapons and so on. So Haqqislam, where do we start? Well, I think I've started a couple of these videos by sort of going through a segment which is, what do I buy? If I'm new to Haqqislam, I've just got the opening sort of starter sets, where do I go from there? Remember, this Haqqislam starter pack that we're looking at right here is basically like one half of Red Veil. So if you and a buddy have got one half of Red Veil, well, you've got the Line Troopers, you've got the Ghulams, you've got the ability to proxy a Ghulam as a doctor. Well, it's not really a proxy, it's just that's what it is. The Tuareg, remember, the model's a sniper rifle, although there's nothing wrong with treating it as a hacker or a doctor. Khawarij has been updated now with the new fatality rules. We'll spend a bit more time in depth on that one, and the Zhayedan, used a bit of a decent sort of shooting trooper. So I think I'll just briefly comment on what you might sort of add to your collection. The Beyond Red Veil expansion pack, I think that if you don't own any other Haqqislam models, these three models are actually really, really useful for your faction, so I would recommend them. So again, if you and a buddy have got the Red Veil set and your friend's playing Yuching and you're playing Haqqislam and you both want to branch out on getting these upgrades, these are really good additions if you've just started and you have nothing else, because Tariq is a really good Rambo. You can have a lot of orders to fuel them with. The Fide, you can't really go wrong with. Sometimes you're going to have to go first, and the Fide almost always gets value. And the Ragik, one of the better airborne deployment troopers in the game because of Dogged. We'll talk about the Ragik a little bit later. So all I want to say is that sometimes I can be critical of things and say, don't buy this, don't buy that, but there's nothing wrong with starting with the Haqqislam starter set and the Beyond Revel set. It's not like, for example, Pan-Oceania, where not really sure if you'd want to get the things in the Beyond Ice Storm pack, for example. The Swiss Guard's good, but the other two models, the Kamau and the Bolt, aren't really worth it. Anyway, this is not a Pan-Oceania video. We're going to be talking about Haqqislam in this video. This is the faction that can have the Ghazi Muttawi'ah, and although we're going to be going through every single profile and we're going to be talking about these guys, I want to start with these particular troopers first, because for me, they are faction defining. If I am going to show up to a game or to a tournament with Haqqislam, it's because I want to be able to have access to these guys, among other things, but they are really, really important. So after I sort of give you the list of reasons why they're amazing and explain, okay, if you're a new player, you probably want to get your hands on these and paint them up straight away, then we can branch out and talk about the rest of the more interesting troops in the faction. If you're a slow painter and, you're not really sure where to start, paint these guys first because they're going to see more playtime than anything else, really. So why are Ghazi Muttawi'ah so good? Why do they define Haqqislam in certain ways? And why do you want them? Well, when you're starting Infinity and you're just participating and you're just getting involved and you're just learning how things go, nothing really matters in terms of your army list choice. That comes later. It's just when you get to a higher level of play and you're competent and you're playing against other competent players that win conditions matter, and you want to be able to enable certain things and defend against your opponent reaching their win condition. So we'll talk about the jammer first, because this is the one piece of equipment that only the Ghazi Muttawi'ah have. No other faction can have this. The jammer is this thing, this attacking device, this comms device, which can attack a target without needing line of sight. So through a wall. Nothing else that I can think of in this game could do that apart from hacking, but hacking can only target certain things like heavy infantry or other hackers, for example, or remotes, whereas jammers can target anything. The only people who are immune to jammers are Morats, or people who are immune to isolation because of veteran. So very, very few people have immunity against it, but a jammer will isolate you and prevent any further orders being spent on that model. So what you're able to do is you can use it offensively to go up and jam something very important to your opponent that they're relying on to capture objectives later on or to do a Rambo run at the end of the game and completely thwart that. All they can do is try and get an engineer there, but if they don't have something nearby, they're screwed. But more importantly, jammers are a defensive device where you can ARO without needing line of sight. Your model is safe. Things are coming past your Ghazi, and you're just jammering them and jammering and jammering them. And with willpower 15, damage 13, they've got to take a BTS save. The chances of getting something through is very high if they're not trying to reset. Or even if they're trying to reset, it's pretty good. Now, there are two main reasons why this is so good in this context. Number one, you can move your troops close to an objective and stop your opponent from moving through and capturing the objective at the end of the game. That's one of the most powerful things in ITS, and you've got a tool against that which nobody else really has. Also, Haqqislam generally want to go first if they're using stuff like the Fide, for example, the impersonating troops, or the Daylami, which we'll talk about soon. And if you're going first, well, you have to defend against the last turn push to retake objectives, but the jammers are so perfect for that. Thirdly, the jammers, actually, to come back to that last point about defending, if you are up against a Rambo rush, if you're going for the last turn, going to grab the objectives in the last turn, having jammers set up in a network along your deployment zone prevents your opponent from actually doing a lot of damage in their first turn, which can be huge. So bear in mind that you've got your model, it's got an 8-inch radius around within which the jammer, the zone of control, can affect. So that's a 16-inch diameter, and if you've got 4 Ghazis, which you're entitled to and you should take, well, that's 16 multiplied by 4, so multiplied by 4. So you've got your whole deployment zone locked down with these jammers. And then I'll bring in the third point, which is that you can declare an intuitive attack against a marker. Markers are one of the best things in the game, and the jammers are even good against those. So revealing that ninja or whatever it is prematurely, and if it happens to be a hacker, then you can come in with your Barid and swoop in and kill it. Now, if that wasn't good enough, that the jammers can do all of that, and probably a little bit more that I'm not thinking of right now, Ghazi Muttawi'ahs are impetuous, so they get to move out and do it for free initially, or get into a better position for free. They've got smoke grenades, so they can impetuous and throw the smoke with no orders spent at all. They have a chain rifle and an Emarat, so if you're defending and your opponent's coming around and using something which is vulnerable to one of those weapons, will you use that instead of the jammer? If you're attacking, you've got the choice of the pistol, or the chain rifle, or the Emarat, or the jammer, which are all 4 distinctly different guns. So you can wait for their arrow and then choose how you're going to screw them over. So let's say they dodge. Well, you fire the pistol, because you've got 2 shots against their 1, you can beat them in the face-to-face roll. Let's say they shoot back at you, and they're a very lightly armored, but vulnerable but expensive trooper. Will you chain rifle them? Let's say they are a tag and they decide to reset against your jammer. Well, you shoot the Emarat, which does EM ammunition, which can immobilize them and isolate them. So for 5 points, that is just absolutely crazy that this is even a thing. This model does need a nerf. I would recommend that the jammer itself becomes less effective, or their willpower is reduced a little bit more, or their points cost goes up. That's what I would recommend. I don't think you should take the boarding shotgun version of the profile, by the way. The chain rifle is half the cost, and the chain rifle can be a lot more useful than the boarding shotgun. If you're going and attacking, there are so many other models in this army that can have shotguns. It's not really worth funneling your orders into these guys. You should funnel your orders into somebody who can use the shotgun more effectively, if you know what I'm saying. So, Ghazi Muttawi'ah, if you've just started Haqqislam and you're serious about playing Haqqislam and you want to get good and you want to beat people, well, you've got the starter set, you've got the Beyond Red Veil set. Let's say you've got that. Well, you want to buy these guys straight away. Let's say you do that. Well, you still don't really have a very robust collection of models. So let's just go through and just quickly recommend a couple of purchases before we talk about every individual profile. I personally quite like the Nafatuns, even though you've got a lot of cheerleaders in the form of the Ghulams. But the reason I like the Nafatuns is that you can hide your lieutenant very, very well by taking several of these guys and making them all the light flamer profile. So that's that. But they defend your deployment zone very effectively with their flamethrowers, and there'll be a niche situation occasionally where they can throw a regular grenade. At the end of the game, you can coordinate order and bring them all out into the open and just fire long lanes with arrows with their rifles, and people will have a hard time, moving over and getting objectives without killing them, because they'll be really annoying. So at 12 points, they are actually really useful, and I see nothing wrong with starting with a pack of those guys if you are new. Just like with any faction, if you're starting, there's again nothing wrong with getting the remotes, because remotes are applicable in every single game. You'll never have a game where they're not really coming in handy, especially since you can use them as the flash pulse bot for 8 points, or the sensor bot, which has a range of really good uses, and as a specialist, or even the HMG, which, to be honest, can be a lot better than some of the other Rambos. Some people think, it's good to go for the Farzan, not the Farzan, the Alpha Seed, or the Azrael, for example, but it might actually be a bit more points efficient just to get a Ghulam hacker, put assisted fire onto your standard HMG TR bot, and use that as your attacking piece, because you're hitting on 14s and you've got shock, whereas the other guys are hitting on 13s. Simple as that. So, yeah, I also recommend getting at least one of the skirmishers, either the Farzan or the Al-Hawa or the Hunzakut. Just start with one of them. You've already got your Tuareg, but that's the Tuareg's something you want to sort of save a bit, whereas the camo guy is just going to be doing a lot of work throughout the game. So grabbing one of those is just not a bad idea. And then beyond that, it's just a matter of learning the game a lot better and working out what to get after that. So the starter set for Haqqislam, the Red Veil expansion, if you get one of the camo infiltrators, get the Ghazi Muttawi'ah, obviously, and get some remotes, and you're set, and you're on your way to being a very well-rounded and effective Haqqislam player. But, of course, the reason why a lot of people are watching this video is because they want to see me go through every profile that this faction has available to them. And, of course, I don't want to disappoint, so let's have a look at that. How about we zoom in a little bit? Is this about the right size? Yeah, I think we can see this quite well. Haqqislam, vanilla Haqqislam. So there are going to be some models here which really are models which are models you want to take in the sectorials and are very specific to the sectorials. Doesn't mean you can't take them in vanilla. It's just that they don't really shine. They don't really come into their own unless they're being used as part of a sectorial, and I'll point that out when the time comes. I also don't want to spend too much time talking about the mercenaries like the Bounty Hunters and Nauf and Miranda Ashcroft. Generally, if you are playing a vanilla faction and you have access to the really juicy, awesome vanilla profiles, you want to cherry pick the best stuff. You don't really want to spend a lot of time with the mercenaries because they aren't always as good. And again, they are irregular models. You've got so much other irregular stuff to deal with, and you don't want to take too much irregular stuff in your army, right? One of the challenging things about Haqqislam is that you want to have enough regular orders that you can actually do some, committed, consistent runs, so make some plays. But you also want some irregular models because they're just such damn good models. damn good units. It's just that if you have your entire army full of yellow orders, so to speak, I mean irregular orders by that you just struggle to get anything done. So bear that in mind. So we're going to skip bounty hunters and go straight to Bashi Bazouks. Bashi Bazouks actually have quite a lot of profiles now. The Red Veil box set had a limited edition model which came with a Bashi Bazouk. I think you've seen the guy that I'm talking about. But there are now quite a few different models. There's a shotgun guy. I think there's an SMG guy now. So we'll have a talk about all of them, but just to remind you what they look like, that's the boarding shotgun guy there. I've actually got this guy. And if you don't like that one, maybe the submachine gun guy, very lithe, skinny female SMG model, very cool looking. So these guys are unique in the sense that they are drop troopers and they have holo projector level 2, which I think is pretty cool. They're also very, very cheap. They are irregular troops, but that is somewhat mitigated by the fact that they're airborne deployment. Remember, you can use that irregular order to be spent on yourself to come on the side of the board, and in the same way that any other normal regular airborne trooper wouldn't have been able to use their regular order on somebody else. So effectively, it's the same as a normal trooper. The only time the irregular actually matters is that if you survive your first turn of coming onto the board and you're onto another turn, then you've got a regular order which can only be used on that guy. But chances are, if he's still alive, he's probably going to be wanting to do some more damage anyway. Holo projector level 2 is quite fascinating on this guy because it means that if he decides to land by rolling a fizz check and coming onto the table, then he comes on with his 2 holo echoes, and if he lands somewhere where your opponent generates an ARO, they have to choose which guy to shoot. So that means that holo projector is suddenly a lot more relevant. It's not a matter of them delaying and then shooting. They have to choose straight away. So this actually makes holo projector more relevant. Normally with holo projector, you're just walking across the battlefield, they delay, then you shoot, it reveals the right guy, they shoot the correct person, and then it's all over. So in this case, it gives him a little bit of protection. You can show up on the side of the table edge, and let's say they reveal their TO sniper, for example, and that TO sniper only has a 33% chance of hitting the right Bashi Bazouk. So I think that's really, really cool. So it gives you that stickability and risks them wasting their shot, and then you can start charging out with your guy. So I think that's really, really cool. His fizz is a bit low, so if you are going for the dropping in the middle of the table, that's all fine and good. But bear in mind, the other thing is if he scatters, then you really be relying on the holo projector because a lot of people might be shooting at you. But your chances of surviving yet again are good. Armor 2 helps that further if they do pick the right model. 0G is not really going to come in handy very often. But looking at the profiles, let's go through them. So the cheapest one is the submachine gun guy. I really like this profile because the submachine gun, the ability to get shock rounds is huge. It's just as good as a combi rifle at short range, and it comes with a chain colt as well. So that's the only profile here which comes with the template. So that can be amazing if you come around the corner and they decide to shoot back at you to face against the submachine gun and you chain colt. Well, hey, you know, that's a free hit. So that's probably my favorite profile of them. The combi rifle's a bit more expensive and comes with an e-mauler. Yeah, you can lay them, but the applicability of this, I'm not too sure how great this is. I think it can be cool if you come around the corner and lay an e-mauler in line of sight of them and then move around to face and they have to dodge the e-mauler. So that can be quite good. Allows you to combi them to death. So that can be a very good profile if you're willing to pay out the full 17 points. That 5-point difference, though, is significant. I mean, that's a whole new model you can add to your list for that. AP rifle. I'm not too sure if I'm loving this, though, because the AP rifle with the breaker pistols, again, the combi rifle is just as good at winning face-to-face rolls, but at least with the combi rifle, you've got that trick with the e-mauler. And to be honest, armor piercing doesn't really come to play very much. Even if you're shooting this against a tag, if you're shooting it against a tag, chances are the tag is probably going to outfight you in their defensive turn, regardless of which kind of tag it is. Maybe against like an overdrawn, which is very bad at short range, but yeah, there are a lot of tags which are quite good at fending this kind of attack off, and even with AP, I mean, the armor is still going to be quite high. Boarding shotgun, I always love the boarding shotgun profiles. Shotguns are really good for drop troopers because they have a better chance of getting into that precise position for that exact shot. Rifle, light shotgun, pretty much the same sort of thing here. It's just that the rifle gives you more versatility because you've got both options. So once you're within 8 inches, you fire the light shotgun. Further than that, the rifle. But my favorite profile here is definitely the submachine gun. Don't count out points cost here. I know that I normally say that if you're going for a drop trooper, you should, break the bank, you should splash out and really spend up large on them because they're going to be actually having a lot of points, a lot of orders spent on them. So you want as much efficiency as possible. But this guy's a throwaway guy. As soon as he gets into some sort of combat, his chances of losing the firefight or whatever is actually quite high. He's only bliss skill 11, mind you. When you take the Ragik, that's when I'll be recommending the Spitfire. But with this guy, I think it's better to, spray and forget kind of thing. So submachine gun chain colt is my recommendation here. That is probably the optimal profile. Either that or the combi rifle e-mauler for just doing a lot of damage before this guy is expended, so to speak. And he is an expendable trooper at that sort of level. But like I said, with 12 points, if you're saving yourself 5 points or 3 points here and there, you can afford a helper bot or a war corps or a Ghazi Muttawi'ah or the next trooper we'll talk about, which is the Daylami. Cube Jaeger, yeah, again, a mercenary. He's a specialist and all, but I think that the cost of this guy is a bit prohibitive. If you've got 18 or 21 points to spend, there are some other models in the Haqqislam which I think are better, namely the Bashi Bazouk we just talked about, or the Hunzakut, or one of the Ghulams, in my opinion. 5 SWCs, you can take a sniper Ghulam for that. The Daylami infantry. So these guys are a little bit underwhelming on paper, and they may not look that impressive initially, but they are actually very, very good. You'll see here, this is the box set for the HB, the Hassassin Baram sectorial. And the best way to get Daylamis is to get a box of these guys, and you can get 3 of them here. And before you say, why would I take 3 of them, bear with me here because you may actually want to take several of them. The thing about these guys is, once again, they are irregular troopers, but the idea is to be expendable with them. The really fascinating profile here is the light shotgun / Panzerfaust limited camouflage inferior infiltration. So with physical 10, you're rolling on a 7 or less when you're using inferior infiltration because of the -3 penalty. But if you're rolling that 7 or less, and what is that, a 35% chance? You may be able to place these guys right next to enemy troopers, next to their deployment zone, and you could spend their irregular order and make one single surprise attack with their light shotgun and do some damage. And if you're trading an 8-point trooper for a 20-point trooper, that's worth the 0.5 SWCs. If you fail the 35% chance to deploy there, well, you've got a guy sitting back in your deployment zone with a Panzerfaust who is providing a really, really annoying ARO. He can also no, he can't re-camo, he's got limited camouflage. He can also just be part of a coordinated order and get back into cover, or be part of a coordinated order and shoot multiple Panzerfausts at some particular target if you've got several of these guys. 8 points is a steal. And the thing about the SWCs is, depending on the kind of list you're running, a lot of the time you're not going to be just starved for these SWCs. You're going to have a whole lot of them spare, which is where you can actually afford them. As for the other profiles, I wouldn't really recommend the standard ones like the shotguns and the Panzerfaust, HMGs and so forth. You've got other models which are doing the job here. If you are going to be taking HMGs, they should be on your TR bot, or they should be on your MSV2 trooper, or on your heavy infantry, who are going to actually do more damage with their higher ballistic skill, and so on. So these guys are all about messing with your opponent, making life harder for them, providing really annoying AROs, and trading with models that are more expensive than them, and going on a bit of a run and causing your opponent problems. And they do that so well. So there's nothing wrong with taking these guys. You don't have to take them. They're not the best thing in the faction, but they're very, very good. And that's what they do. That's what the point of them is. Ghulam. So the basic line infantry, which come with your starter set. These guys are quite plain, but in some ways they are better than, or more useful, or more desirable than your Yuching, Zanshis, or your Pan-Oceania Fusiliers, for example, because they have the one stat that really matters for these line troopers a lot of the time, and that is willpower. If your Ghulam is your lieutenant, well, that's willpower 14, much better chance of winning the role for turn order, for example. If you are a hacker, well, guess what? You're a really good hacker because of willpower 14. If you're a doctor, well, not only are you a willpower 14 doctor, you got Doctor Plus, so that's willpower 17 when you're doctoring people at a bargain 16 points. So these guys are so good at supporting. You won't use them for attacking and so forth. Yes, you can put them in a sectorial and make a link team out of them, but that's what we're not what we're talking about today. We're talking about vanilla. So my recommendation is to take a single Doctor Plus Ghulam. If you're not running the Nafatuns or any special lieutenant, maybe run a lieutenant Ghulam. And sometimes you might want a standard Ghulam hacker. So if you're playing Haqqislam right out of the gate and you've got this set, you might want to run lieutenant, hacker, doctor. That would be my recommendation. That gives you a nice, well-rounded list, capable of achieving things. I'd especially take the hacker if you're running the remotes. If you're not running the offensive remotes, then you can get away with just taking a Barid, who we'll talk about soon. But again, you don't really want to take the missile launchers and the sniper rifles and stuff. Well, the sniper rifle and the Panzerfaust, yes, a case can be made for them, because they're so cheap. And if you're not running a SWC hungry list, then the SWC investments are so cheap for the Panzerfaust Daylamis and the Ghulams with heavy weapons. Sniper rifle can be quite cool because it's a regular sniper rifle that has shock. So that can be really good. The missile launcher might be a bit more on the expensive side. And remember, they're only Bliss Skill 11, so they're there to annoy your opponent more than anything. But if you can afford them, no reason not to chuck them in. Won't spend too much time on that. The Hafza. So, the thing I find fascinating about the Hafza is that it's got Holy Projector level 1, and it can be your lieutenant. So this can be an amazing way of hiding your lieutenant. You may proxy this guy or sort of projector him as Zhayedan. Let's say you've got the starter set and you don't want to take the Khawarij or the Zhayedan. You could proxy or you could projector the Hafza as one of these guys, and your opponent's going to think, well, it's probably not going to be the lieutenant. And you've got a lone Ghulam sitting way at the back who looks obviously like the lieutenant because he's a normal Ghulam, and you could fool your opponent that way. They'll come after them with their specular killer or whatever it is, and they'll kill one model, and that'll be it. And then you've got your entire turn to fight back at them because your Hafza is laughing all the way to the bank. So I love that about the Hafza. Some people like the idea of fooling your opponent into thinking it's not a threat until he starts opening up with his Spitfire or the heavy rocket launcher in ARO, but to be honest, I don't really like to use them in that way, because if your opponent is having their active turn and they're moving and activating things which are Rambos, they're going to be able to beat the Hafza anyway, even if it's a surprise, because they've got their HMG or what have you. The heavy rocket launcher is a bit of a maybe, though, because what you could do is projector this guy as somebody really insignificant, and your opponent falls for it and goes to shoot them, and you fire back with a heavy rocket launcher, and it clips a whole bunch of things standing next to that active model with the template. It's just risky, because your opponent may not activate that model, and your opponent may not fall for it. And if they fall for it once, they're probably not going to fall for it again. As for the basic profiles, the Port Observer and stuff, just wouldn't bother. Just really wouldn't. I mean, the Spitfire, I would recommend getting a Krakot, Red Fury for that cost. I mean, this guy is just so much better than the Hafza if you're going to run him in that basic, boring role of just going and being a Rambo. Because if you look at it, sure, he can be like Holo Projector for part of the game as a Spitfire, but wouldn't you rather have a guy that, has a role in the Medichemistry chart, is impetuous for an extra move, has 4 deployment level 1, has chest mines, is amazing in close combat? There's just no comparison with that. So the point of the Hafza, and the only time you might take him, is to conceal your lieutenant, in my opinion. That's the best usage of him. Now, I will say for the record that when you play QK, the Kapukalki sectorial, that's when the Hafza is a lot more useful, because he can be a member of a Djanzabain link team, thus making your heavy infantry link a lot cheaper, and that's the one thing that heavy infantry links need above all else. So, Hafza, yep, you can take him in vanilla, but, you know, take him against an opponent who's likely to try and go for a lieutenant assassination and fool them. That'll give you a big advantage in that game. The Haqq, mechanized infantry. These are basically Ghulams with mechanized deployment, so they can deploy, you know, way up the table, but they have Ghulam stats. They are plebs. There's an argument that can be made for using these guys as a specialist to hit buttons more reliably, but I want to argue against that, saying that if you're playing a 300-point list, you're probably going to have a Farzan or a Hunzakut or a Tariq or a Nahawa to do that anyway, so you should be funneling your orders into those guys because they're better at it. They've got marker state. So there's no point spending like a small discount on doing something that's on a unit that's much inferior, much less gooder, shall we say, with good England. I always get a little bit tongue-tied when it comes to these review videos. Haqq, don't love him. I just don't love him. And I mean, if he was in any other faction, fantastic. You put this guy in Pan-Oceania, you take him all the time because you've got willpower 14 there. Fantastic. You've got a forward deployed, a mechanized deployed guy. Imagine if NCA had access to this guy. They'd love this guy. But Haqqislam don't really need him. You can just use your normal, ordinary Ghulam from your deployment zone and walk up to your objective. That only takes an extra order, and you save yourself all those points. Or, of course, you use your camo infiltrator who's standing right next to the objective the entire time. I really don't have much to say about these guys beyond that. The Breed! I love this guy. So, Haqqislam, with high willpower, you'd expect them to be good at hacking. I think that this is probably the second best hacking faction in the game next to Nomads. Thanks to this guy, the Breed. He is awesome. Number one, he's super cheap. Number two, his willpower is a premium 14 as a standard for this faction. Number three, he comes with a pitcher. That's really important for firing the pitcher and actually getting the range on your hacking. And number four, his killer hacking program has a lightning, which is a hacking ability which sets them at a -6, which is huge for winning face-to-face rolls, and it's burst 2. So that really packs a wallop. If you want to, you can make him the regular, boring hacking device. At least he gets a pitcher, you know. So I guess if you're going to play it that way, and you know you want to have assisted fire for your robots, and you also want to pitch for some reason, you can do that. Or if you want the assault hacking one for Icebreaker, Icebreaker's really good for hacking a Yotum or something like that because it removes all the BTS. My thinking though is that if you're going for having a normal hacker, just take the Ghulam, because you don't need the pitcher. And if you're going for an assault hacker, take the Tuareg assault hacker, because it's a surprise. You'll get into ARO hacking much more effectively. You can't throw your pitcher out and expect your enemy's tag to come into zone of control of that pitcher before killing it, or after killing it. Yeah. Take the killer hacker is my recommendation. You can even take the Fort Observer guy and have a free pitcher there, but again, why bother? I mean, you want a hacker. That combo of having the same model, you know, has the pitcher and the hacking device is premium. So this 16-point profile right here is the pick, in my view. 16 points, you get a killer hacker, and he's a premium killer hacker. There are so many factions out there that have killer hackers, and their killer hackers are so much more expensive, but not even as good as this guy. So you get a model that's cheap and more effective than enemy killer hackers in a lot of different ways. Just absolutely love this guy. So if you're new to Haqqislam and you're looking to add an extra model to your lineup, just get this guy at some point. You won't regret it. Even against factions that aren't really hackable, if you're up against Ariadne quite a lot, 16 points, he's a cheerleader. What can go wrong? I mean, he's a specialist. I mean, even if you're not hacking with him, he's good. Love this guy. So, we've looked at the Barid, the Govards. Okay, so these guys strike me as being a little bit bland. They have Multispectral Visor 1, which is good. Multispectral Visor 1 is good on models which are doing a lot of AROs, doing a lot of, you know, Rambo runs, they are attacking a lot because you're completely mitigating minimalism and you're reducing the effects of marker state to either 0 or -3 in the case of Tio Camo, but again, they are a bit bland. They've got Veteran Level 1, which doesn't come up a whole lot, and Ballistic Skill 12, which is, you know, I mean, they're starting in your deployment zone, they're 4-4 speed. What are you going to be doing with these guys? Are you going to be arrowing with your sniper rifle or your missile launcher? I don't think so, because you're going to be wanting to do that with your Lastique sniper, which we'll talk about soon, or your AR sniper, or your Zhayedan sniper, or your TR bot. Guys like that are better at arrowing than this guy is, or even your tag. Are you going to be attacking with the Govard? I don't think you are. 21 points is the cheapest guy, and he's just got a rifle. Let's say you get an HMG in there for 29 points. Are you going to be arrowing with that model? I don't think so. Better to use your Djanzabain, better to use your Krakot, better to use your TR bot, better to use your whatever it is. Tariq does a much better job. He's more points, but you want to spend more points on a model doing that role. These guys can be in a sectorial. These guys can be in a link team. They make quite an interesting link team because they're relatively cheap for a link team with multispectral visor included, so that is cool. And when you're in a link team, you're less susceptible to white noise. But don't like these guys as standalone, just add them to your list one at a time kind of dudes. Assassin Hussam Yazbir. This guy's in the Diafoes list, so we won't show you a photo of him, but again, recommendation is to take this guy in the HB sectorial where he becomes a bit more relevant. To take this guy in just your basic Haqqislam force, I don't really love him just because he's sort of a bit expensive for what he does. If you're just using him as an infiltrator to hit objectives, cool, smoke grenades and stuff, yep, 34 points though, don't really like that. You're better off taking your Farzan. It is cool how he's got martial arts level 3 and he's actually good at close combat. With the smoke grenades, you can get in there. But if you're going to be using a model in that particular way, well, you may as well be relying on your FIDE. What I would do, if you like that, is to invest in your FIDE or Algebal separately, and then you've got more than enough points to take a couple of infiltrating specialists with Mark Estate. So rather than trying to ball them into one very inefficient unit, for its points that is, may as well take one very specialized unit and another very specialized unit for each of those two roles, if you see what I'm saying. He does get a lot more usage out of being in that sectorial low, so we're just going to pass over him for now. Muyibs, again, this is a sectorial unit. You want to take these guys in assassins. So these guys are amazing. Have a look at my list building video where I talked about making a link out of these guys. They are armed to the teeth, but for all the reasons we've talked about so far, and I'm going to keep repeating myself, do you want to take just a single Muyib? Well, probably not, because for the points, if you're going to be Ramboing from your deployment zone, there are other models that can do that, and if you're going to be arrowing from your deployment zone, there are other models that can do that. When you are building an army list and evaluating profiles, you're looking at putting a model into a category. Is it a cheerleader? If so, is it survivable or is it cheap? And what kind of order does it provide? That's how you rate a unit. This is not a cheerleader, obviously. Is it an ARO piece? In which case you're looking at, well, how survivable is it against, an HMG, and how effective is it at, plinking off people from long range? Or is it good at defending your deployment zone? Can it do that cost effectively? Is it a support unit that provides hacking or some sort of buff or helps you win scenarios? Is it a specialist? Does it do that? Is it a Rambo unit which just excels in killing models in the active turn? Does it do that better than other things you can get for that points bracket? And that's how I approach list building and how I would recommend you guys do it as well. A single Muyib on his own probably isn't the ideal thing for any of those roles, if you follow me. Layla Sharif, the same as Yazbir. We're going to sort of cross over her a little bit because she's better in the sectorial because she can be part of that link team. It is very cool that she has a shock marksman rifle for attacking things and a killer hacking device. It's just that the Barid's better. Come on, guys. 16 points. Cheaper than her. He's better at hacking because he's got lightning and he's got a pitcher to get the hacking in range. And if you're going to be shooting, well, use something else which has a shock marksman rifle like the Ayah, for example. Great range band for that, or a Spitfire. So that's her. The Kaplans, these guys are interesting because, again, they can be in a link team in a sectorial. Let's talk about whether you'd take a standalone Kaplan. Well, maybe. I say maybe because he's a bit better at shooting things with a Spitfire than, say, the Krakot, based on this guy is not impetuous so he can gain cover, and he's got mimetism, so he's better at winning those rolls, and he's got BTS 6, which makes him a lot better at surviving against stuff like plasma and viral and like EM weapons, for example. So if you like that, he could be pretty good. Having him as a doctor can make him a specialist, so I like that, but at 27 points, wouldn't you rather take a 16-point Ghulam Doctor Plus, which is much better at doctoring? The adhesive launcher doesn't crop up very much. Engineer, well, you've got access to engineers already. The multi-sniper, maybe. Well, for 30 points, do you want this guy with his mimetism, or do you want the Lasik with a viral rifle and also has mimetism? I'd prefer the Lasik. It's got climbing plus as well. The Lasik, less survivable with the BTS, but the Lasik is just better at, saving you points, I think. Does it save points? Let me just quickly check the Lasik. Might have to scroll over here and actually find it. Lasik is, Lasik's way cheaper. 5 points difference. So, I'm about ready to write this guy off. I think the Spitfire profile is the only one that really interests me. But ask yourself, in what circumstances is the Kaplan better than other similar models that fill that role? And how often does that situation come up compared to the times where the other alternatives are better? So if we look through all the times where the Krakot Red Fury is better, okay, it can't be jammered, it might get climbing plus or super jump sometimes, or the metachemistry roll just might trump, mimetism. It's got impetuous, it's got forward deployment, so it gets up the field quicker. It can kill things in close combat. It's got the chest mines, which are amazing. It can berserk. So all of these situations where, when those abilities are more useful, the Krakot's better. And then you look at the Kaplan and how often is he better. Or another comparison, the Kawarij, which we'll look at in a moment. Kawarij, in fact, we'll look at him now for a similar number of points. So you can take a 28-point Spitfire Kaplan or a 32-point 1.5 Kawarij. So for a little bit more of an investment, you get Fatality level 2, which means you are critting twice as much. And you've got super jump and I think better ballistic skill. So would you want to invest an extra SWC point and a couple of extra points of regular points cost for that and super jump? I think you would. I think you would, because Fatality level 2 just shreds, right? Getting crits is a big deal. I mean, that's the difference between killing tags and just not killing them when you're spraying them with, 5 or more orders kind of thing. So, would you take the Kawarij, though? Let's ask that question. I think yes. I think you would. Especially if you've started out with your basic Haqqislam starter pack, and let's say you've got the starter pack, but you haven't bought Beyond Red Veil yet. If you've got both Kawarij and Tariq, I think you're better off going with Tariq, because he's better in that Rambo role slot. He's the big dog. But if you haven't got Tariq, or if you're playing some smaller points cost games, this guy might be better. He does suffer a little bit from the fact that he's just armor 1, he's only got 1 wound, he can't survive a chain rifle hit. He's not wonderful in that regard. He's got a little bit of resilience thanks to bioimmunity, so I do like that. Super jump is kind of cool, but the 4-4 speed, you can't leverage super jump as much as you can, whereas Tariq gets full leverage out of that with his 6-4 speed, so that's an important difference. But yeah, it's not a bad investment, guys, for a Fatality level 2 Spitfire. This guy is more desirable than something like a Krakot Red Fury or a Kaplan Spitfire, or any of the other Spitfires we saw as standalones, like the Ghulam Spitfire or the Moyib Spitfire, stuff like that. This guy is probably the go-to for that kind of thing. The other profiles, he's a little bit lackluster there. I mean, you wouldn't want to make him the lieutenant. He's just too flimsy to be a lieutenant. Unless, of course, you're running your Farzan chain of command, then maybe. The other ones, Sporting Shotgun, Panzerfaust, you're passing up the opportunity to take Fatality level 2. Fatality level 2 is just such a good rule at the moment. A lot of people think it's too powerful. You really should be leveraging that and making the most of it while it's there, if you are going to be investing in this Kawarij, in my opinion. So, all in all, worth taking. If you're going to take him, take Fatality level 2. Nauf gives Haqqislam a multi-sniper, which is something they don't really have, but really, I would rather go with some of the other options. There is an argument to say that he is preferable to the Lasik. It's just the Lasik is so much cheaper. The Lasik's got climbing plus, which I find quite useful. X-Visor, really handy. I guess multi-perspective visor level 1's better, but a viral sniper is probably better than the multi-sniper in a lot of cases, just because it's like having shock with it. This guy does have marksmanship level 1 though, so it's like a viral rifle in the sense that he's got shock attributed to his double action round. So they're comparable profiles, but I'd prefer to save 7 points. That's just me. I'd prefer to save the 7 points, to be honest. I mean, this guy's, he's paying a little bit too much for the extras. I mean, yeah, MSV1, BS13, okay, alright. I mean, there's an argument there. I mean, you can have a debate about it. You can have a debate, I mean, sure. So, yeah, there's going to be some times where he's better than the Lasik. So I guess you can take him. Crackit Renegade, not strictly a Haqqislam model, obviously, but this is yet another of the vanilla factions that should always take this guy. He is so good. He is regular. He's got the normal impetuous, so you don't have to impetuous, but when you do impetuous with him, he becomes more useful. Your deployment zone is going to be premium real estate. There's going to be so many models looking for total cover. This guy doesn't have to share it with him. He can deploy out there. He's got immunity to jammers. He's got the chest mines, which are amazing for their berserk potential, close combat +3, the direct template weapon. And he's got access to the submachine gun for shock or the Red Fury. He's just so good. I mean, I've talked about him in other videos. Strongly recommend getting hold of this guy if you're going to seriously play Haqqislam. He's really good. I don't want to spend too much time talking about him. He's just such a good throwaway rainbow piece, and when he's not doing that, he's a cheerleader, and he's cost-effective for that. Great guy. Miranda, not so much. Nafatuns. Okay, so Nafatuns, we talked about these guys earlier. They are cheerleaders, and they allow you to swamp your combat group with lots of regular orders, which you can funnel into the expendable troops, which are going to trade for things more expensive than them. They defend your deployment zone with their flamers, and they conceal your lieutenant if you're not going to run the Hafza, for example. I don't know what happened here. Didn't load up my image. But if you're going to take these guys, I'd rather not take the heavy flamer. I know it's only one additional point, but the thing is, the light flamer is a potential lieutenant profile. So by taking the light flamer, you're more likely to disguise your lieutenant if you're going that way, if you're rolling that way, if you feel what I'm feeling. If you feel what I'm feeling. So you might run 2 or more of these. I sometimes take all 4 of them. I think 2 is probably a good number. Conceals your lieutenant and blocks off your deployment zone. Even models with 2 wounds coming after these guys can't just ignore the flamer hit because it burns, right? They've got to keep passing saves or keep rolling saves until they pass one. So really useful unit. The Najarun Engineer. So 17 points is a bit of a sting. I don't actually like taking this guy at all unless I'm running the Maghariba Guard. And we'll make a case for taking the Maghariba Guard later in this video. 17 points though for just an engineer. If all you're doing is taking him for the occasional classified, I would say no, don't go down that direction. It's true that an engineer can revive, units that have been immobilized or isolated, but Haqqislam typically doesn't invest in these super valuable heavy infantry troops, whereas other factions might. So the engineer is just not as relevant. Wouldn't really recommend him again unless we are taking a tag. Too expensive otherwise. Odlisk. Here's an interesting unit. So let's go and talk about these guys. I'm not always in favor of models that, have NWI as their selling point. If NWI is the best thing you have going for you, then you have to really be worried about the fact that there is so much shock. There's a proliferation of shock in this game. There's a shock epidemic. Every submachine gun, every multi-weapon, all of the Red Furies, all of the assisted fire on bots, these are all capable of just killing Odalisks outright. And what you're doing here is you're paying premium for a 1-wound model with only Blister skill 12. It's got some really handy little rules like ICOL level 3, 6 Sense level 2, 360 Visor, but these are niche skills. 6 Sense level 2 is especially cool, but for AROing with, more so than your active turn. So the question is, do you want to invest in a Rambo? And again, going through the categories, is this a cheerleading unit? No, it's not. It's too expensive. Is it a pure arrow piece? No, it's not, because they're going to get shot at by the shock model in particular. They're just a Blister skill 12, 1 dice returning fire unit, so they're not really a arrow unit. Are they a support specialist unit? No, they're not specialists. They don't hack. They don't heal things. They don't do any of that. They don't defend your deployment zone except by the nanopulsar, but you've got your Naphitons for that anyway. So, are they a Rambo unit? Is that what they're for? Well, arguably, you can get in close combat, use your ICOL level 3, or arguably, you can move over there and Rambo them with your Spitfire because you're NWI. But 30 points, guys. Come on. Have we not learned our lesson already? Let's go back to the coverage again. 32 points and an extra SWC, you can super jump, and you can blast them with Fatality level 2. Would you rather be doing that? Blister skill 13, by the way. Odalisk, Blister skill 12. Would you be rather shooting them with Fatality level 2, or would you prefer to have NWI just in case you lose the face-to-face roll? I'm not sure. I personally would prefer the Kalrij. The Krakot, I mean, that's my boy, right? I actually personally would take the Krakot Red Fury over the Kalrij, but Odalisk, I don't think cuts the mustard. You can take the Harris team of Odalisk, or I think even a fire team core, I'm not even sure, in their sectorial. But would you really want to? And again, these other guns, submachine gun, boarding shotgun, rifle, honestly, you may as well take the Bashi Bazouk if you're going to be going that close to them, or be taking an infiltrating model. She's just a 4/4 speed model that starts in deployment zone. The effort you have to spend going all the way across the battlefield, all of those orders getting there, and only to sort of flub some roll. Just don't recommend her for vanilla Haqqislam. She's not the best thing you can take. Tariq, on the other hand, is a serious choice now. He used to be a little bit mediocre. He used to be quite an average sort of model. But they changed him. They gave him the glorious Fatality level 2, which means that you get a critical hit on a roll of a 1 and not just the roll that you may need. Also, his damage is +1, so he's hitting them with a damage 15 Spitfire instead of a damage 14 Spitfire, which I believe is a difference as well. You certainly feel it when you're being shot at by this guy. He has a specific model which I, for some reason, can't see on the screen, so I guess we'll just look at the Red Veil version of him in the middle there. Is he worth the 53 points? Well, I would argue, yes, he is. Let's talk about why. So, Movement 6/4 is premium if you're an Rambo unit, because you want more orders available to you for shooting once you get there, and you're going to have more remaining to you since you're going to get there quicker. Movement 6/4 is really quite important with Super Jump, because there are going to be some places you can't jump to efficiently with just 4/4 speed. So Super Jump is more effective there. Also, you can jump 6 inches into the air and then shoot, rather than just 4 inches. And he's a larger S5 model, so his ability to actually get into line of sight and create some face-to-face rolls is greater with his mobility. Martial Arts level 1 and CC 23 and Poison does give him some opportunity in close combat. It makes him more dangerous when they're trying to remove him that way. If there's a ninja or shinobi trying to get him, yes, they'll beat him, but it's a little bit more dangerous to take care of this guy than it is some other targets. Willpower 15, he can be your lieutenant. Great lieutenant option if you're running the beautiful Farzan chain of command option, which we'll talk about soon. So you can do a Rambo run with him. You've got that extra SWC. If you're taking an AP rifle, you probably want the Spitfire though. But that extra order from the lieutenant's token, so more super jumping, more killing. Let's see what else it's got. Bioimmunity is kind of useful, although not something to write home about. Religious Troop is a little bit of a liability. Don't love that, but hey, we'll take it. I mean, he's so good at everything else. if you're not shooting with your Spitfire, he's got the grenades and the nanopulsar. That's cool because if you can super jump to a point where they're clumped up, you are going to be using these guns at some point in time. And DA close combat weapon also kind of handy. So is he worth 55 points and 1.5 SWCs? I think he is. I think he is, guys. And he is because of fatality. If you are going to get into like 5 or more face-to-face rolls across the course of the game and doubling your chance of getting criticals, and of course them failing alpha size more often because of your extra point of damage, this guy's a steal. And because so much other stuff in your faction is going to be cheap, especially if you're following my rule of allocating your units to particular roles, like this guy's your Rambo, and your Lasik is your ARO piece, and your Barid is your support trooper, and everybody else is just like getting in their way. You've got the Ghazis and the Daylamis and the Ghulams just clogging them up so that this guy can do his work. Then you've got an efficient list on your hands. So this guy's gold. Warcore, just your standard mercenary, no reason not to take him in Haqqislam if you can afford him. Everybody knows what this guy does. He basically provides an extra order if you can turn your command token from the irregular to regular, or he provides this annoying flash pulse, sometimes critting them and putting a damper in their plans. Let's talk about a slightly more interesting model, and that's the Zhayedan intervention troops. This guy is interesting. I am not the biggest fan of him, but I like him. I think he's cool. He's this guy. He's a super interesting unit. Now, these profiles are all quite distinct from each other, and coming back to our evaluation method of deciding what role to put him in, he's not a support trooper unless you take the Doctor Plus, although I wouldn't recommend the Doctor Plus because at 27 points, you could be doing the exact same thing with a 17 point or 16 point Ghulam, right? So let's rule that profile out straight away. Is he an arrow piece or is he a Rambo piece? He's going to be one of those two, and it depends which profile you take. Marksmanship level 2 on your breaker rifle or sniper rifle is good. You're forking out a lot of points for that, but the ability to ignore cover when you're shooting is effective. And he covers off some range bands that the TR bot with assisted fire does not. So if you're getting in close and shooting up close with the breaker rifle, that's premium. He's hitting on 15s there. So really, really good. And, you know, shock included. From long range, the sniper rifle, again, hitting on 15s with 2 dice. Sniper rifles have shock. Marksmanship level 2 makes this guy very, very good at doing that. So, what about arrowing? Sniper rifle, again, hitting on 15s because he's ignoring cover. That's pretty good too. Should you take him? That's the question. Okay, let's come back to our comparisons. Is he going to be a Rambo piece? Okay, we're moving through the battlefield with our breaker rifle and our light shotgun. We're starting in our deployment zone. Are we wishing that we instead spent our orders and our points, not just one of those things, orders and points, are we wishing we spent those two things on a Khawarij, or a Krakot, or Tariq, or a Ragik? Something like that. Are we wishing we did that? Well, sometimes we are, aren't we? Because breaker rifle, just your 3 dice, not 4. Damage 13. Yeah, it's a breaker rifle, so they're rolling BTS, but a lot of things are just going to be passing the saves, okay? Marksmanship level 2, that's cool for hitting, but doesn't ignore mimetism or anything like that. He's got into the right range band. He's pretty expensive, so are you confident that you're going to be able to get over there and actually get within 16 inches and kill enough things with this guy? Spitfires are going to be able to get into the range bands a lot more effectively and clear out more targets and get crits more often because of their higher burst value. Sniper rifle. Are they leaving an arrow piece for you just to sniper? Are you going to just be shooting and plinking them with your 15s to hit? Well, maybe. If you're a Lasik, well, you're only hitting on 12s, but your sniper's doing more damage, and you're imposing a mimetism effect on them, and you're doing that a bit more cheaply. So, is he worth it for that? The Ayar, who we'll talk about soon, he's pretty cool because he basically has surprise shot, right, with his sniper because of hollow projector. So that's going to impose a penalty, and he's ballistic skill 13. He's not hitting on 15s, but hey, I mean, at least he's 2 words. I'm not too sure if I like the AR sniper, to be honest, but coming back to the Zhayedan, I think the conclusion I want to pitch to you guys, and the the comment that I want to make about this guy is that he's viable. There's a case that can be made for taking him. Is he like the best thing in the faction? Does he define Haqqislam? Do you think of the Zhayedan when you think of Haqqislam? Do you write your pano list, with things in it just to prepare for the Zhayedan? No, you don't. You don't worry too much about this guy, but he's got cool factor. He is a decent trooper. Quickly talking about the other profiles, missile launcher and Nimbus grenades. You can't throw down the Nimbus and then, air roll with them straight away. It just evaporates too quickly. So the Nimbus is not great in that regard. He could air roll by throwing a Nimbus and then continue air rolling with a missile launcher. It's just, that's not very practical. The HMG, Lieutenant, you should really be using the HMG models in those roles. Again, it's a role thing. The HMG model in your army list is going to be the Djanzabain, or the Alpha Seed, or the Asawira, or the TR bot. It's simple as that. I mean, he's not going to be doing the HMG job as well as those guys do, and he does not have marksmanship level 2 on the HMG profile. If he did, then there'd be, a claim. There'd be a case to make. So the two profiles that I like here, the sniper and the breaker rifle, possibly the sniper more so than anything else. So if you're going to take any profile here, I think it's probably going to be the sniper rifle guy. That's it for the Zhayedan for now. Armand Lemuet, I think you guys all know this guy. He can be useful. It's just a bit hit and miss. Sometimes he's going to be countered, sometimes he's not. I think he's probably better in a faction like Toha, which can, I think, put the symbiote mates on him. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't want to talk about him too much, because if you're going to be playing Haqqislam, I think the points cost for him is a bit prohibitive. It's probably better to take a humble Lasik, because the Lasik is so points efficient for that kind of role. The Djanzabain, I think we really need to talk about this guy, because in vanilla Haqqislam, he is the only model which has multispectral visor level 2 in a faction that does smoke grenades very, very efficiently. Your Ghazi Muttawi'ah, which you are going to be taking, have Impetuous. So they're going to be moving out and throwing smoke grenades for free. So this guy has free clouds of smoke across the deployment zone for him to easily move into and shoot, again, through the cloud at whatever he wants, and enemy models are going to be shooting back with a -6 penalty unless they have 6th Sense level 2 or their own multispectral visor. And at 35 points for your HMG, he is a steal. He's really, really good. I love the fact that regeneration grants you shock immunity. So you've got your Ghulam plus Doctor sitting next to him, 17s or less to revive him. He's got a cube, so if they fail, they can have another go. And he's just gold in that regard. He's not so much the aero sort of trooper unless you're taking the sniper rifle version of him. But the thing is, in your reactive turn, you're not going to have the smoke as reliably from arrows, from Ghazis, for example. So it's about the active turn. You keep him prone. You keep him behind a wall in your reactive turn. And in your active turn, you've got the smoke laid down. You set them up. You kill their arrow pieces, easily eliminating things like their NIST snipers and whatnot. Because his damage 15 HMG, his ballistical 12 gun, 4 burst, the penalty from the smoke, he's just so reliable. And if he does get hit by a crit and arrow, bring him back with your Doctor Plus, and you're golden. Annoyingly, there's a box set with 3 other beautiful models here, and none of them are particularly worth taking. There's a case that can be made for the Shock Marksman Rifle, because that's quite a cool range band. He's got shock, but you should be taking the HMG. There are other things in your list which do that closer range role. His job is just to have the firepower, just to have the oomph there, to really crush them at that 16 to 36 inch range. Anything beyond that, you want your Lasik or whatever it is. Anything below that, you sort of want your Tariq or your Kawarish or your shotguns, right? Yes, he can be a specialist, he can be a hacker, but again, these are just such points inefficient profiles, because if you take, I've said, I'm sounding like a broken record here. As soon as you take a model that's, kind of good at this and kind of good at that, and costs a lot, you're just not as efficient as taking one model which is great at that and very cheap, and another model which is great at this other thing and it's very cheap. That's how to design a much better list. So HMG Djanzabain, do you want him? Yes, you do. You might be able to get the old out of production Djanzabain that I've got, Or you might be able to go halves with your friends on a box like that and sort of dole them out and each person takes one of them, or buy one of the non-HMG guys off somebody who's already got the box set and proxy him as an HMG guy. That's what I would do. But like I said, you can get one of the classic sculpts if you want to. I've got the classic sculpt HMG guy, which I feel is quite appropriate. HMG profile is the only one that I ever use anyway. It's just a shame. The new sculpt's obviously a lot better. So Djanzabain, really well worth it. Drew's shock teams. Now these guys can be in a sectorial in Kapukalki, QK, and they make quite an interesting sectorial because they can have that, you know, hacker in there, and they can have the light grenade launcher with X-Visor, and that could be quite a good speculative fire link team. With vanilla Haqqislam though, you wouldn't want to take these guys for all of the reasons we've talked about. Having an X-Visor is nice, but it's not worth all the extra points, and they're not cheerleaders, they're too expensive. They're not very good specialists because there are other things which can do that more efficiently. They're not ARU pieces because you've got other things which do that way more efficiently. They're not Rambos because you've got cheaper models which, you know, are way better than they are at that. So they're just overcosted line troopers unless they're being used in QK, in my opinion. The Lasik. I've referred to this guy a number of times in this video, comparing other models to the Lasik, and they don't really come close. The Lasik sniper rifle is a fantastic profile to take. You can take the viral rifle, but the thing about the viral rifle that I don't like so much is that you're trying to move up the battlefield, get your mimetism into play, get your viral rifle into play. You might shoot from beyond 16 with your X-Visor, but it's better to just take a Spitfire model like the Courage for similar points in that sort of bracket and absolutely crush them with your Fatality level 2 than it is to try and force the issue with your viral rifle X-Visor. The sniper rifle is the profile to take though, and with Climbing Plus, it allows you to get up and over onto some really good high ground for him. I recommend playing a strategy where in the first round of the game, you just hide him, and then in the later rounds of the game, you bring him out, you cover off a specific area, and your opponent can't afford to waste orders killing him because they need those orders for securing objectives. And that's it in a nutshell. That's how you play this guy. He is so good at doing that. Really like that profile. He does now come, I think, in a box or a blister set where you get both of these models, so feel free to use both versions of them. I think you'll find in the long run that you'll be using the viral sniper a bit more than the viral rifle, though. Excellent, excellent model. He's nice and cheap. The thing about him, though, is he's 1.5 SWCs, and if you're taking a lot of those Daylamis and those Ghulam snipers and things that cost just a few extra SWCs, you might not be able to afford them. But that remains to you to build the best list you can. The Assassin Ragik. Now, I say that this guy's one of the best airborne deployment troopers in the game because he can survive an ARO. At least for the turn that he's going to be active. So without having to pay too much for him, he can be dropped down in the middle of their lines and take a chain rifle hit or a combi rifle hit and then keep going and assassinate the things that he needs to assassinate. Or he may show up on the side of the table and get hit by a hidden deployment model arrowing against him and live, right? And as soon as he's lived, he can start raking into them with the Spitfire or the rifle or what have you. All four profiles are legitimate and can be taken viably. My favorite profile is the Spitfire because if you're going to be making a consistent run with him and surviving a hit and continue gunning them down, you're going to get the most damage done before you die with the Spitfire, hands down. That extra burst is just king, right? A case can be made for using your special weapons cost elsewhere on your other more important things and just have him as a throwaway pleb with the boarding shotgun or the light shotgun from the other guns. But if you're going to be doing that, my argument is that you may as well be just running a Bashi Bazouk instead, because the Bashi Bazouk has got that reliability and that resilience with his hollow projector, and he's half the cost for that shotgun, right? Another case can be made for the Ragik hacker assault hacker, but again, it's an assault hacker. Yes, you can be a specialist, but there are other things which can specialize in that and be specialists. And assault hackers are vulnerable against killer hackers once you move into their lines. As soon as you come in range of a repeater, you're in trouble. So this is not really my favorite profile. I've actually converted my guy so he's got a Spitfire. So Spitfire, Ragik, excellent profile. Saladin. Don't care how you pronounce this guy. He's actually pretty cool. I think this model is even better with the new ITS now that you can run a 10 order list if you want to, and you don't have the -2 penalty. Saladin. If only I could find the actual Saladin model so I can show you guys on screen. I may actually have to pull up. Oh, here he is here. So, Strategos level 3 in the bargain bin. NWI doesn't really matter too much. You're going to be keeping this guy in total cover for the entire game anyway. He's got a repeater, so if they're coming after him with some sort of heavy infantry trooper, well, at least you can help protect him, but he's not really going to be spending a lot of time running around the battlefield. You're paying 36 points for the ability to win the lieutenant role more reliably with willpower 16, and to use your lieutenant's order as a regular order instead. Is it worth 36 points? Maybe. If you're specifically getting the value out of him by using that extra order on your Rambo, by getting Tariq out there, or your Fide, or Al-Jabal, or your Ragik, and just doing maximum damage, then he's worth it if your plan is to alpha strike. If you're just having a bit of a blase sort of first turn and being very efficient with it, and you're not making a dedicated Rambo push, that extra order is probably not going to be worth the investment here. Bear in mind that for 36 points, you could have 3 Nafatuns for that, or you could have 4 cheap remotes, for example. Not quite 4. You can have 16 points worth of Minesweeper bot plus an 8-point Flash Pulse bot, and still have points left over for another model. So is he worth it in the long term, considering that? And my argument is no. He's actually not worth taking if you're going to be playing a well-rounded balanced list, which wants a lot of efficient models. He's not that good at doing that. It's much better to invest the points on things which can actually spread the value around the list. He is worth taking if you're going to be taking advantage of Strategos level 3. So he has that synergy with the Fide where Strategos level 3 also prevents them from using reserve troopers. The real golden thing about this guy is to take him with Al-Jabal or a Fide and to prevent them from hiding a model with their reserve trooper. If you can do that, then your reserve trooper is your Fide. You deploy right next to them, you kill them. Saladin was worth it. So that's how you play him. Sekban. This guy is a little bit bland, and he can be used in a sectorial, but in the same way that I wrote off the Kaplans and I wrote off the Hulkas, I'm going to write these guys off as well. They can be in a fire team, but in vanilla Haqqislam, just wouldn't recommend them for the reasons that I mentioned before. They have some cool guns and all, but are they a cheerleader? No, they're not. Are they an arrow piece? Well, they can be. They've got a heavy rocket launcher. But would you rather the heavy rocket launcher, or would you rather a Lasik? Well, let's face it. You'd rather the Lasik or the TR bot. Are they a specialist trooper? Well, you can be a Doctor Plus. We've been through this before. You should just take the Ghulam Doctor Plus. It's just as good, and you save 10 points. 10 points is significant in this game. That's like a tenth of your list. Are they a Rambo? Okay, so 360 visor, only good in the reactive turn, but very, very situational. 0G hardly ever comes up. Fireteam duo, not very good in this context. Are the Sekbans worth taking in vanilla Haqqislam? My argument is no, for those reasons. As simple as that, they're just overcosted for that particular role. They're not cheerleaders, they're not really good specialists, they're not good Rambos, they're not really good ARO pieces. Seriously, guys, are you really going to be standing there in your deployment zone with one heavy rocket launcher when you could spend that 23 points and 1.5 SWCs on something else? The number of times that comes up and is effective is going to be dwarfed by the number of times that the other alternative trooper is going to be more effective than they are. The Al-Fasid. This guy looks cool. He's a very cool-looking trooper. He comes with the Operation Red Veil Battle Pack. And look at him with his massive chain gun. You can also take the very classy looking heavy rocket launcher guy, look at his pose, very, very cool looking model. Is he worth it? So he is expensive. For the same points, you can take Tariq. Would you prefer this guy instead? Okay, so this guy can shoot his Specfire grenade launcher. He can fire normal or smoke grenades. He's got an HMG instead of a Spitfire. He's got the same ballistic skill, if not better. No, same ballistic skill. He's got mines, and he's got mine layer. 6th Sense level 1 and veteran are also kind of cool, and he's way tougher than somebody like Tariq. Let's go through the checklist. Is he a cheerleader? No. Is he an arrow piece? Okay, so maybe he's an arrow piece. He's got armor 5 and BTS 6, so he's very tough. And if he soaks up some damage, he can just go guts prone behind a wall. He's got a cube, so our doctor can revive him. So maybe he's an arrow piece. Do you want to spend 53 points or 45 points on a heavy rocket launcher just arrowing? Maybe. There's a case for that. Okay? There is a case for that, because with armor 8 behind cover, if you can taunt your opponent into wasting orders trying to kill him, and if they don't kill him, or even if they do kill him but it costs them like half their turn, then he may have been worth it, especially if you can revive him. So there's a case for him being an arrow piece. He costs twice as much as the Lasik does, so you could get a Lasik and a TR bot for the same cost, but maybe he's worth it. Is he a Rambo? Is he a Rambo? Okay, well, he's 4-2 speed. That's prohibitive. It's very hard to run around the battlefield getting into good lines of fire, getting good arrows off with this guy. Tariq's better at that. Tariq is better at that because Tariq's got fatality. Tariq's got, the speed. He's got 6-4 speed. He's got fatality level 2. So Tariq is my go-to guy if you're in that role. If you're taking this guy just to go and kill things, I don't really think you're going to be getting the value out of it in the long run. Is he specialized? Now, here's the tricky part. Is mine layer and smoke grenades useful? My argument is yes, but your deployment zone is already so well defended by all of those Ghazi Muttawi'ahs and those jammers and the Nuffertuns and stuff like that, that you don't really need that mine as badly as it looks like you need it. Do you need the smoke grenades? Well, my argument is if you're a good player and you know what you're doing, you're going to be able to get basically the same effect. You're going to be able to accomplish the same thing with your Ghazi Muttawi'ah, so you don't necessarily need them. So he's providing a few peripheral things, which he's paying too much for. Are you going to spec fire with your normal grenade launcher? Well, you start in your deployment zone. Couldn't you just use your Hunzakut, which we're going to talk about later, and the Hunzakut's normal grenade launcher, who's already in a position and has surprise attack, by the way. So this guy has some little tools which don't really provide the value that you really want from a 53-point model. The heavy rocket launcher is a maybe, and it's a very big maybe. That's a lot of points you're spending on him. But if you like the idea of really slowing your opponent down with that heavy rocket launcher, then by all means, take this guy, set up a doctor next to him, and go for gold. The Asawira, and the Asawira is going to be subjected to the exact same criticisms that I have subjected everybody else to. And will the Asawira hold up? Let's talk about it. So you've got the AP rifle version and the Spitfire version in the classic sculpts. 40 odd points. Okay, 4-4 speed, not bad. 2 wounds, armor 3, BTS 9, not bad. Ballistic skill 14. Okay, now we're talking. So ballistic skill 14 is very hard to come by in this faction. Spitfire Asawira for 43 points, 2 SWCs. Would you prefer the Asawira in the Rambo role? I think we can already discount the cheerleading role and the arrow role. That's not really what this model does. But the attacking role, maybe. Assault means that you have potential in close combat, which you don't get elsewhere, but Tariq is also pretty good in close combat. Ballistic skill 14, is that better than ballistic skill 13 and fatality? I'm going to argue no. Because I'd rather be getting crits twice as often than missing, 5% more because I've got lower ballistic skill. Regeneration, that can be kind of cool. If you're stranded out in the middle of nowhere, physical 14, you might be able to revive yourself. Nanopulsar, well, Tariq's got one of those as well. Tariq's also got grenades. This model is tougher than Tariq. Is it worth it? She's cheaper, 43 points compared to like 50 something. Can be a lieutenant, but can't be a Spitfire lieutenant. I don't know, man. I think for the reasons why we said we like Tariq, we could say we like Asawira. It's just that, would you want to spend 10 extra points to get more speed and super jump? I think that you would, because if you're investing everything in a model that's going to be spending your entire turn doing things, you want that extra utility. Tariq can jump over walls and shoot things from, on top of rooftops. He can jump onto rooftops himself. He can retreat on top of a rooftop to survive after his Rambo run. The Asawira can't do it. Asawira is still good, but in what sense do you say it's good when there's a better model for that role? My recommendation is to go with Tariq or a Ragik or a Kawarij or a Krakot with a Red Fury in favor of the Asawira. It's just the thing is, the Asawira has these moments though. There are some situations where you'll be so glad you had regeneration, or you're so glad you had martial arts. You might want to run a duo sometime for running her up with a Doctor Plus. There's also a sectorial where she can be in a Harris link team, which is quite an expensive link team, but it could be quite a good one. So I'm not going to write this model off and say it's terrible. I'm not going to say you shouldn't take it. I just don't think it's as good as some of the alternatives in that category. The Ayar. This guy looks cool. He's the new sort of model that came out for everybody in HSM3. And there he is there. Look at how badass he looks. There's also the pistols version of him. I really struggle with this guy. I really struggle to really appreciate the value of him, I think. Let's look at the profiles one by one. He's got a lot of rules, but do they amount to much? Do they synergize? Surprise shot level 2 is hard to use because you move out, they declare a delay, which they can do then, and then you surprise shot them and they shoot the correct AR because the 2 hollow echoes are gone. Doesn't feel great. So, yes, you get surprise shot level 2, but would you rather be doing it with a model that can impose penalties anyway, like Djanzabain through smoke, or your surprise attack camo marker? Tariq is going to be blasting them more effectively with his Spitfire because he's got a higher burst and he's got fatality. This guy is tough. His wounds 2, armor 3, BTS 3, I like that. Specialist operative, that's really handy for moving out, killing things, getting objectives. Free agent comes up sometimes. Religious isn't wonderful. Shock marksman rifle is a pretty good looking one there. The emitter and DEP, I think they're too situational, but the shock marksman rifle, yeah, I could see a little bit of value coming up out of that. But again, would you take this guy or would you take the Asawira? Would you take him or would you take Tariq? Would you take him or a Ragik? I think it's a matter of really being smart with Holo Projector, coming up with some clever ways to use that perhaps I haven't thought of. You could take the sniper. My opponent in the last game I played used his Ghulam. Pretended the AO was a Ghulam and then sniped me. Although that wasn't very effective because he was up against an avatar. For nearly 40 points, this guy is a bit too expensive. What I feel like he needs is for there to be a bit of a buff in general to Holo Projector as a rule, or he needs to come down in points cost, or he needs maybe a better gun or some better options there. Again, this is a model that if you're dead set on taking him because he looks cool, he's not going to be terrible. He's not going to perform badly. It's just that he's not quite as brutally efficient as some of the other alternatives, in my view. The Janissary, this guy is just like your boring heavy infantry model of Haqqislam. He's a bit like your Mobile Brigada or your Zuyong Trooper or your Orc Trooper in Pan-Oceania. He's that kind of guy. He's just your plain old Blister Skill 13, 2 wounds, HMG. If you're running him in Vanilla Haqq, you probably just take him as an HMG. He can ARO as a missile launcher, but with ARO Burst 1, he's just going to be outclassed by so many models. Any sort of HMG, especially HMGs which have a camo marker or mimetism, are going to get the better of him. He's wonderful in QK because he can be in a fireteam core, with 3 Janissaries, including a Doctor and a missile launcher and HMG, plus 2 Hafzas to make up the link team. That's gold. Go for that. That's where he shines. But in vanilla Haqq, not so good. The Akbar Doctor is pretty cool, but it's situational, and I don't think it's quite worth 41 points to have like a glorified Doctor who's just doing that. The HMG's the one you want to take in this context, but would you take this over the Djanzabain HMG who's doing the job through smoke? Would you take him over the Alpha Seed, who again can provide smoke or all the little utilities we talked about? We talked about the reasons why the Alpha Seed isn't wonderful, but if you are going to take a model like that, I would recommend the Alpha Seed over the Janissary HMG, just because the Alpha Seed gets more done. He's got more stuff, and he's tougher as well. This guy's faster, but again, are you going to be running around the battlefield and killing a lot of things and then leaving him hung up to dry? Or do you rather take Tariq or a Kawarij who can actually get to safety with super jump? Azrael. So this guy is very similar to the Morat model that you might be familiar with. The Sogarat. The Sogarat. He is a punching bag in the sense that he's got armor 5, and his gun is a bit more effective than the Alpha Seed or the Janissary or the was the last guy we talked about. Anyway, AP HMG, 41 points. The only thing that this guy is really good at doing in the active turn is shooting at a heavily armored target, which it does kind of well, but you know, do you want to pay the points for that? The feuerback in the reactive turn, do you really want to be doing that? As an arrow piece, he's got no special abilities to speak of whatsoever, so he's going to be punished by anything with ODD, surprise shot, mimetism. Multi-weapons are going to shred his armor a little bit. He doesn't really stand up well to tags. So he's not going to run around the battlefield very well. He's not really a specialist or a cheerleader. He's just got no specialized abilities. So I would take this guy if your opponent loves taking defensive arrow pieces which cover the whole board. The AP HMG is very good at doing that. I would take the Feuerbach if you really like the idea of just slowing your opponent down at long range and then healing him with the Doctor. So he's not useless. He's not terrible. He does have a place. Like, you can buy the model if you think he looks cool and find him awesome. But he's not super efficient. He's not super... He's not something you really want to write home about. He's not something which I really like to be jealous of from other factions. He's just kind of handy. I probably would prefer the Feuerbach guy more just because I'd be using him to slow people down in the reactive turn. It's just sort of embarrassing when you put him up next to something like the Yan Huo from Yu Qing, something like that, or the Sin Eater from Nomads. Just people that are really good at providing arrows, or any sort of ODD sniper, or for example, the Noctifer in Combined Army. It's just embarrassing how weak this guy is compared to that in the reactive turn. And when it comes to the active turn, cool, 41 points for an AP HMG. AP really isn't as good as it seems like it might be on paper. So I think you might find him underwhelming. Maghriba Gaia. This is the only tag in Haqqislam, and I actually think he's kind of good. On paper, he looks like a kind of a lackluster tag, because he's just your boring Armor 8 multi-HMG, and that's all he does. But the reason why I like him so much is that this is a faction which can defend your tag very well with the jammers in your deployment zone. So they can't just come and creep up on him and get him. You've got access to an engineer, which is Whip 14, which can heal him more effectively. He has a specialist inside him, which pops out in his Willpower 14. He's one of the only models which can be Ballistic 14, and he's your only chance to get a multi-weapon. So he's the only thing that can alternate between AP and Shock, and that is really, really good. And he's very, very speedy, thanks to 6-4 speed. And he's the only thing in the game with Silhouette 8, so he can cross the terrain very effectively. And here's the thing I love, is the 2 heavy pistols. That's my profile of choice, because you're not needing to defend him, because you've got jammers to do that. But when you attack, you're going to come around corners, and you don't really want to shoot at -3 with your HMG, but you do want to shoot with 3 bursts from 2 pistols at ballistical 14 at +3, and heavy pistols have extra damage, so that is the profile. The 360 visor with suppression fire in the middle of the table, yeah, it's cool, but there are so many ways around suppression fire, we wouldn't really recommend it. And like I said, the heavy flamethrower isn't really as useful as the pistols because you've got other models which can defend him. So that is really the value of him. And at 79 points, he can really be worth it because there's so many other things in your faction which can make up the cheap troops and to support him in that role. So unlike the Guija, he actually does work in the context of a list. I actually find he's really, really useful. Starting to hyperventilate, guys. I've been talking for so long, I'm going to take a drink of water. Alright, so we had our fun with the Margarita guard. This guy's cool, man. I mean, I love the model. He's such a heavy and weighty and satisfyingly robust model to hold. But yeah, the way to use him is in your first turn, use him as an arrow piece, give him a little bit of space so he can guts back behind total cover, have an engineer there, and in the last turn of the game, run him out. If your opponent's got a turn left, just put him in suppression fire in the middle of the table, or just go ham, just move out there and kill things and use the specialist to hit objectives. He's actually a really, really viable tag in this context. The remotes we won't spend a lot of time on. Flash Pulse drone, you can only take one of them, but you should because you want regular orders in your list and he's very cheap. Camille, again, I take the Minesweeper because 8 points or lower. If you are running out of deployment space, you might not want to do that. The Evo can be cool if you're taking a lot of, Ragiks and Bashi Bazooks. It saves you from having to spend a order on your hacker, putting up the controlled jump. But the Minesweeper, if you're playing a lot of tables where there's a lot of total cover, that can be really useful for having the extra regular orders. I take these guys quite a bit. The Helper Bot, always useful. Rafik, the cool thing about this guy is the only sensor bot in the game that comes with a light shotgun, so he's quite unique in that regard. Haqqislam don't really need him as much because they've got Willpower 14 specialists, and you don't really want to be relying on Willpower 13 specialists if you can take Willpower 14 ones, but the shotgun is cool. The Smart Missile Launcher I find really fascinating because Haqqislam is one faction where it's easier to get Spotlight off with your Tuareg Assault Hacker or your Pitcher from your Breed or your Forward Observing Infiltrators. So it's easy to get that off. It's just that these remotes will never be cool again until it's more efficient to attack with them. As soon as you start shooting and they start using their U-turn hacking programs and stuff and start dodging, it just starts to become very, very inefficient. So these guys aren't really in a great place right now. The TR bot is excellent because this is not a faction which has access to really, really good, efficient Rambos, except in the case of Tariq and maybe the Ragik and maybe the, I don't know, the tag. But the thing is, if you want a cheap, cost-efficient, clearing models out of town unit, assisted fire on a remote, you just can't go wrong with that. And in the reactive turn later in the game, he can be very useful to defend in some cases. But 6-4 speed, getting into position with the HMG ready to go and, assisted fire, really excellent. Al-Hawa. So the Al-Hawa is a really cost-effective specialist. If all you want to do is press buttons, then the Al-Hawa is your man. You can take an assault hacking guy, and he's nice and cheap for that role. He can be a little bit predictable because he's just a regular camera marker, so your opponent can sometimes play around him. I take the assault hacker sometimes, but just the plain forward observer for 21 points is a steal. At 21 points, you've got exactly what you want. Super high willpower, camouflage, infiltration. He's a specialist. He's got D-charges. He's a forward observer. For 21 points, what a steal. Wouldn't take the sniper rifle though, even though he's got infiltration, just because your Tuareg is better at it, and your Lasik is better at it from the deployment zone. If you've got to spend points on this guy, you may as well make him the specialist doing what specialists do best. The Farzan is like this guy, but similar. The Farzan is important because you can take a mine layer version. So if you're taking a lot of these guys, you've got like one Farzan chain command, two like a Hunskort and another Al-Hawa, then taking the mine layer just stuffs the middle of the table with mines, and allows you to fool your opponent more effectively. But the chain of command guy is the most interesting here because it allows you to enable lists which are running a lieutenant Rambo. So you might be running like Qasim Beg, the Khan chieftain, or the Kum chieftain, or Tariq, for example. So taking the Farzan in that role is excellent. I think the Farzan is just a brilliant trooper. He's not like a strong on his own model, but he's just so useful in a list. And again, willpower 14 on a specialist that can infiltrate as a marker, just brilliant. And he can fight quite well with his close range quarters, boarding shotgun, ballistic skill 12. This guy's fantastic. He's got multi-terrain, so for those missions where there's like a big zone of difficult ground, he's just really useful. Hunzukut, again, this is like the triage of really useful specialists. You're going to be taking at least one of them, surely, if not all of them, because you can never go wrong with these types of models. Infinity rule set is just so favored to camo marker units, infiltration, stuff like that. The Hunzukut is going to be a debate between the light grenade launcher or the specialist. The specialist is an 18-point deployable repeater. It's irregular, but at 18 points, what a bargain for completing objectives. The grenade launcher gives you just an irregular order, free shot at them every turn. Sometimes you get kills. And again, it's only 18 points, but you pay the SWC for it. My preference is to take the Hawa Forward Observer, the Farzan Forward Observer, or Chain of Command. I take a Tuareg hacker a lot of the time, and the grenade launching Hunzukut, just so I've got the specialist roles covered by now, and I've just got such an effective list with 4 models which are brilliant at slowing down the enemy and completing objectives, and the rest of my army is just like cheap cheerleaders. I've got the Djanzabain at the back for killing things long range, clearing out arrow pieces, maybe a Lasik sniper for really slowing them down in that regard, and you can fit all of this into a list because the Haqqislam models are so cheap and effective. Al-Jabal is brutal. So the amazing thing about this guy is that he impersonates effectively. It's so easy to get him over there with physical 13 if you have to make for a roll for it. Actually, you're rolling in your willpower, even better, 75% chance. And Al-Jabal is a master of close combat because he's got martial arts level 4, so you make your 2 rolls. He's got surprise attack. He kills anything that he touches when he moves into close combat with him. And if you spend 35 points, it's worth it if you take out the lieutenant. If you take out like a 50-point, supermodel in their deployment zone, it's been worth it as well. But with his rifle there as well and his light shotgun, he might be able to come around and kill multiple models, just making the game a wash. So this guy is so powerful, and the great thing is that he can be used as a reserve model and combo up with Saladin really effectively. Great model as well. One tactic a lot of people use is to throw the smoke grenade from around the corner first, or spec fire it and then walk into the smoke. You can even re-impersonate before you do that if you're coming up against quite a difficult opponent in close combat. But it's just so easy to get the value out of him. Just be careful of combined army, because you don't start in the second level of impersonate, just the first one. But again, against everybody else, you can deploy him right in front of their deployment zone, move 8 inches and get discovered, and then move into close combat and kill your target. So if they've got a very obvious lieutenant, this guy is brilliant for killing them. The Fide, of course, is exactly the same, except he's just a bit cheaper. So I think we passed the Fide already. The Fide is just a bit cheaper, but at least you can take the mine-laying profile. Al-Jabal can't quite do that with laying mines down, so that's where you might want a Fide. The Fide can take a boarding shotgun, is a lot cheaper. I sometimes take the boarding shotgun just because you can save 6 points, which is a decent amount of points. And I like to just expand my Fide in a single one-off shot, try and kill several models, or at least win a face-to-face roll against something, and do crippling damage with my Impersonator. But if you like the scalpel approach or like close combat better, Al-Jabal is your man. The Tuareg, I think this is last before we go to the bikes. The Tuareg, there are 3 useful profiles here. The sniper rifle, which can be a ball-busting surprise if you put him in a tower somewhere to the side of the field where there's a big long fire lane which you can't reach from your deployment zone. Is the only way to have hidden deployment sniping in this faction. It's the only TO trooper that Haqqislam can have. That can be quite a good profile. Blitz skill 11, though, not that reliable, and you pay a lot of points for that, so that's the downside of that. The assault hacker can be amazing because whip 15 15 for assault hacking is premium, and that can be a golden way of just screwing up your opponent's tag. They move into range of your hidden deployed Tariq, you hack them with Overlord, game over. So that's happened in a couple of my games. Can be a good trooper in terms of fighting because it comes with a rifle and light shotgun and the anti-personnel mine, so a good suite, a plethora, an inventory. The third option, which is my third favorite, but for some people it's the absolute top favorite, is the Doctor. Because the Doctor's still a specialist, but you might be able to use the Doctor to revive models which your opponent thought, were goners, like the unconscious Farzan or unconscious, Al-Hal, which is just standing out in the middle of the battlefield. Or you might move Tariq up there next to your hidden deployment Doctor. Tariq gets killed in the reactive turn, and then the Doctor revives Tariq, and he's back up and going again. So whip 18 check for Doctor plussing, pretty awesome. So if you like that kind of strategy, go for the Doctor. My personal recommendation is the Hacker. I love the Hacker. The Assault Hacker is vulnerable against killer hackers, but Marker State and Hidden Deployment safeguard you against that for so long. And you can also fend off a killer hacker with Whip 15 a little bit more effectively than usual if you're doing that. So Assault Hacker Tariq is my fave, closely followed by the Sniper. It's just the Sniper. When you're just a regular Blister Skill 11 Sniper without the multi-sniper, it's quite hard to do damage sometimes, and you don't get the full value. And sometimes you only get one shot before they move over the MSV2 guy and then just total you and just cream you, take care of you. The bikes. Okay, so we're going to finish our review with the bikes. I love the bikes. They're brilliant models, but they all do relatively the same sort of thing. One problem facing the bikes at the moment is that they sort of fulfill the same role that the Ghazi Muttawi'ah do, and they're also irregular troops, and you can't have too many irregulars in your list. The bikes are impetuous, and they automatically throw down smoke grenades very reliably, so they synergize with your Djanzabain, but they don't really need to do that because of the way that the Djanzabain already has the Ghazi Muttawi'ahs to do that. What they do quite well, though, is they zoom across the other side of the battlefield. You expend them. They've got dogged, so they can at least get a couple of kills in. But for the basic cum trooper, I like to go with the light shotgun version. The chain rifle's not so good because, again, you're not needing to deploy your deployment to defend your deployment zone with the chain rifle because you've got other models that do that. And when you're attacking, they just dodge the chain rifles a lot of the time. But it's very hard to dodge a light shotgun because you're getting +8 to hit. And it's easy when you're a bike to zoom across the battlefield, put some smoke down covering your advance, and then getting into a point where you can drive around a corner and blast a row of troopers with a light shotgun, and I think that is their application. Sometimes they'll get into close combat, and you can take the EM close combat version for the since it comes with the light shotgun anyway. So that can be a real killer by putting a smoke grenade down, walking into close combat with a tag, and beating it and basically killing it with the EM weapon. But that doesn't come up very much. You also got to be a little bit lucky for that. The other profiles, I just feel like even though they're cheaper, they sort of squash into other roles which are already fulfilled and aren't as effective at, just being that bullet that trades into the enemy. You can take one of the girls, and the girl that has the light shotgun smoke grenade, for an extra point, it does exactly the same thing as this cum trooper here, and her extra point buys her a bit more value with the close combat department. So if you are going to be going into close combat and you want that extra point, it's probably worth that extra point there. So go with Zamira. Zolika is the other one that you can go with, and she comes with the 2 light flamethrowers and the breaker pistols. She's better in close combat than the rest of them are. But the thing is, if your opponent knows you're going to be flamethrowing, they're just going to dodge, and you can fire your breaker pistols at Bliss Skill 11, and you may not achieve that much. Having said that, if you know that they're going to dodge for sure, at least you're firing point blank with 3 shots at Bliss Skill effectively 14 with the pistols. So that does have something going for it. It'd be better if there are assault pistols, but you can't have everything. So if you like that style, Zulika's for you. And lastly, the Cum Chief. The Cum Chief, he's so the basic one's 16 points. He does the same thing as the basic Cum Troopers, but he's got a Panzerfaust. He's just not that good with it based on his Blister Skill 12. The chain rifle smoke grenade combo, again, they probably are going to be expecting that and just going to be dodging, so his ability to do a really effective Rambo run might be a little bit limited, but he's the best in close combat because he's got the explosive close combat weapon. If you're going to use this guy, my recommendation is to use your smoke grenade launcher and his superior blister skill to lob the smoke grenades there, or at least come in close and then physical 14 plus 3 with the smoke grenade close range and get into close combat with him because he's got an explosive close combat weapon. So with his speed and his durability, getting him in there is pretty awesome. You can make him a lieutenant, which makes him regular, but I just don't think it's worth the extra 10 points. Honestly, guys, I think he's got more than enough speed to get over there. You don't need your 8 orders plus an extra 1 to be able to get into there. I mean, he's going to die, so really all you need is your impetuous order and a couple of orders to get him to combat and get him to kill something important, and then he's done. If he can put smoke next to a tag, move into close combat with a tag, and then hit it several times with close combat 13 and explosive weapon, and if he kills it, then job done. So that's where you would take him. I like taking bikes if you are playing a very aggressive list where you're expending a lot of things and doing a lot of trades. I don't like the bikes so much in lists which are going for the control element of sitting back with your Lasik or your Margarita Guard or your Alpha Seed heavy rocket launcher and controlling the game with things like your Bereed and your maybe a sniper rifle somewhere. The bikes are better for the swarm list where you're going all in, you're throwing your Daylamis, you're coming in with this wave of Fides and Daylamis and bikes and Bashi Bazooks. If you're playing that style, which Haqqislam doing really well, that's awesome. So it's time to sum up the video. Haqqislam are an awesome faction. They're hard to use. You need to get good at balancing regular orders and irregular orders. Some people like to make a 10 combat group list with just regulars and then just irregulars on the side. I like to do it with this 9 regular orders in the first group plus 1 irregular order, and then maybe 4 irregular orders in the second group plus a couple of extra regular orders, just so I've got the room to funnel a few extra points into a irregular trooper who's in a good location. But Haqqislam is a difficult faction to play. I hope this review makes your experience with Haqqislam a little bit better, that you come up with better lists and you use them more efficiently and very effectively. When played correctly, these guys can be such a scary faction because they can Rambo. They do have firepower. They defend so well. It's so hard to go and take out the lieutenant. And they are brilliant at reviving things. They have amazing specialists. The only thing this faction doesn't do extremely well is just to pump a lot of technology into one superior unit, which goes around blitzing people. They don't always have the cheapest cheerleaders. They don't have the 5-point regular order Quangxi, for example, like that. They don't have the Imitrons, for example. They don't have they've only got 1 tag. They don't have any of these super tags we see elsewhere. But as a low-tech faction, they are super efficient, super fun, cool-looking models, and they bring a lot to Infinity. Man, I feel myself sweating. I'm tired. My voice is sore. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Write me some scathing criticism, of course, and that's it for now, guys. We'll have some more faction reviews in future, and hopefully some more games with Haqqislam. See you next time.